Hey, I'm Farbod. I'm a student at Appalachian State University and a double major in industrial design as well as international business with a minor in German. Today we're going to be discussing a controversial topic in regards to Southern cuisine. Stay tuned.
During enslaved times, Africans were brought to the southern United States as enslaved individuals. With them, they brought their culture, traditions, and cuisine. These enslaved individuals also brought foreign crops with them to the United States from Africa through the Atlantic slave trade. Some new crops they brought with them were black-eyed peas, okra, coffee, watermelon, and more. Later on in the post-emancipation era, Caucasians took to new business opportunities and began businesses and restaurants that solely revolved around soul food that primarily came from the creation of now emancipated individuals. Do you think these individuals profited from their own creations? No, they did not. Caucasians in the post-emancipation era took credit for these creations and profited from them as well. Caucasians profited off the creations of African Americans, while these African Americans dealt with racism and hatred, specifically from the individuals profiting off their backs. African Americans were targets of racial injustice. Their new businesses were burnt to the ground, their lives were threatened, and their culture was being stolen away from them.
Alright, so we're here with Lauren today.
Hey!
And we're going to be asking her the question of how do you personally think that American cuisine has been impacted by African cuisine from the slavery era?
Well, Mr. Farbod, that is a fantastic question. So, American cuisine has definitely benefited off of African American cuisine. An example is from the slavery era, and as you know today, our favorite, watermelon, because it's summer season. Foods like watermelon, black-eyed peas, coffee, okra as well. And also you can notice that if you go into Southern-style restaurants, you can notice that there's an African American cuisine influence too.
Throughout the Potlikker Papers, racial injustice was a relevant topic. The topic revolved around an argument between Michael Twitty, a well-known culinary historian, and Chef Sean Brock, a successful Southern cook. The argument was based on popular chef Sean Brock's lack of proper accreditation to the correct culture in which his dishes came from. Michael Twitty's argument was that Brock was giving credit to himself for a recipe that he did not create, but rather recreated based on a different culture's recipe. Twitty urged Brock to correctly accredit the culture for which the recipe was taken from. The argument of profiting from stolen traditions or cuisine is extremely relevant in this scenario. Chef Sean Brock failed to properly accredit another culture for their cuisine, so the several dishes he cooked were falsely labeled as his own creations, and profited from them through the sales of the dishes to his restaurant fanatics. This action of profiting from another culture or person's creations, as well as profiting from them, can be argued to be morally incorrect. This isn't the first case where a white professional has profited from the creations of another culture.
Alright, so we're here with Amy now. I'm going to be asking the same question I asked Lauren earlier. How do you personally think that Southern cuisine in America has been influenced by African American cuisine?
Well, Caucasian culture has plagiarized cuisine that's normally identified as African American cuisine, and this adaptation of African American cuisine has been labeled as Southern cuisine, but when diners go into restaurants, they don't really understand or recognize the roots of what they're eating.
According to the Huffington Post in 2013, Paula Deen admitted to using the N-word along with making racist and anti-Semitic jokes. This resulted in Deen losing her cooking show on the Food Network. It is not the fact that she used racist comments, but rather had no intention of caring about the culture in which many of her dishes rooted from. As a well-known Southern chef, a large portion of Paula Deen's dishes arose from African culture during the slavery era. The action of disregarding this certain culture by using racial slurs is sickening, especially when she has made millions of dollars using their creations. The least she could do is respect the culture from which many of her dishes and recipes originated from. As seen in the argument between Michael Twitty and Sean Brock, using another culture's creations or traditions without properly accrediting them is harmful enough, but also using racial slurs and jokes that target them just pours salt on a fresh wound. Paula Deen's actions towards the African American community should not and has not been tolerated. Although this scenario is relatively common in cultures around the world, there really is only one solution to this problem. Many of these scenarios occur due to the lack of understanding the culture in which the recipes come from. Throughout the course of RC 2001 with Tiffany Wilgar, it has become evident that scenarios like these occur due to improper education and negligence on cultural appropriation. Many can argue that the blame is not solely on the chef or individual preparing the dish, but also on the person eating it. Eaters of the dish should also be educated on the food that they are about to consume. If the chef or individual cooking the food does not explain how the dish originated, it is up to the eater to understand and educate themselves.
Food is not only a source of nutrition. Food is culture, food is diversity, and food is tradition. In an ideal world, people would fully understand where their food comes from. Food is such a diverse global topic and it should always be fully appreciated. The only way to appreciate it, as well as properly credit the culture in which certain dishes come from, is to educate yourself about the food before consuming them. You could be consuming the work of many cultures, but you would never know it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day, and goodbye.